like to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency President Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, the General Secretary of our party, and our Vice President, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, for giving me this opportunity to become a member of this National Assembly to serve in the capacity as Parliamentary Secretary attached to the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member in the opposition this morning tried to define democracy for us. The honorable member ought to know that democracy does not mean hiding your SOPs. Mr. Speaker, in Region 3, the region where I came from, we had 355 SOPs for regional elections and 355 SOPs for general elections. Ask my colleagues who are sitting in this National Assembly if they had not seen the 355 SOPs for regional and 355 SOPs for general. Mr. Speaker, democracy is not falsely accusing the citizens who voted as being dead and migrated. Democracy is not denying the will of the people as expressed by their votes on elections day. Mr. Speaker, the opposition on a daily basis kept randomly and arbitrarily accusing voters of being dead and migrated. I was on the team in Region 3. The Honorable Devdat Indar, the Honorable Dr. Tandika Smith, Honorable Priya, we all worked on the ground. And we found many of those same persons who we were told dead and voted or either migrated. We found them in the communities. Is that what democracy is about? Mr. Speaker, this atrocity Mr. Speaker, first of all, in parliamentary democracies around the world, it is the first time perhaps we would know of a budget that is being debated, but the parliamentary opposition spent more than half of that budget already. It is perhaps the first time in the history of parliamentary democracy that such a situation we are confronted with. Is that how democracy is defined? Mr. Speaker, it would be improper on my part if I don't speak on the recent past. Approximately 1905 days, the people of Guyana endured extreme hardship of the APNU-AFC. The APNU-AFC campaign promises were never delivered. It was flushed instead. Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC's 100 days plan is yet to commence. They had 1905 days roughly, and yet it did not start. Mr. Speaker, where was the good life in the green economy that was promised? One of our honorable members said that perhaps it means to paint government buildings in green, so we are having a green economy. Mr. Speaker, the hardships where the quality of life were severely compromised for all Guyanese. Squandering of state assets and resources. Let us never forget the introduction of over 200 new taxes and fees. Mr. Speaker, firing in targeted communities and lack of employment opportunities. And what was the solution given to us? Plantain chips, cook-up rice, guava cheese, fish and chips. That was the APNU AFC's answers to Guyana's future. Mr. Speaker, when the PPPC government left office, it left agricultural sector with clear indications of great expansion and diversification. There were several systems in place for farmers and agro-processors to expand their operations. Mr. Speaker, after 2015, after the elections of 2015, when the APNU AFC government took offices, they implemented a number of harsh measures that discouraged persons from investing in this sector. These measures also saw many persons over the years who would have invested millions of dollars to scale down their operations due to increased land rental fees and D&I charges, as well as imposed taxes on key agricultural machine. When the PPPC was in office prior to 2015, in addition to crops such as rice and sugar, which have been traditionally produced, greater attention and emphasis would have been placed on the cultivation of crops such as oil palm, coconuts, green vegetables, ground provisions, fruits and flowers. Today, non-traditional crops are playing an even greater role in Guyana's economy, ranking as one of Guyana's highest agricultural export earners. This emergency budget, Mr. Speaker, will begin to address some of the weak areas of these sectors developed over the past 5 years. Mr. Speaker, although a significant amount of these products would be utilized locally, the greater proportion would be destined for the tourist heavens of the Caribbean and the niche markets of North America and Europe. This expansion and diversification of the agricultural sector, whereas in the manufacturing sector, have been greatly assisted by tax incentives provided by the government, by the market intelligence made available to the producers, and by the central authorities, and by the expansion of information technology base in the country. By help provided by the government in some cases in the actual marketing of the products, and by the research and extension services of the National Agricultural Research Institute. Prior to 2015 general and regional elections, Mr. Speaker, the livestock population of the country would have been significantly increased and its quality much enhanced. As a consequence, not only would Guyana be self-sufficient in meat and milk, but a considerable amount of our beef production would have been exported. This, Mr. Speaker, would have come about because of improvements in the quantity and quality of feed supplies through the local production of energy-based protein feeds, through the extension of the areas available for pasturage mainly by improving the productivity of the saline soils to the north and the acid soils in the interior through genetic improvement of the livestock and through greater attention to animal health. Mr. Speaker, perhaps of the greatest significance, however, would have been the boost which the sector would have received through the opening up of new areas for agriculture. This, Mr. Speaker, would have been made possible by the improvement and expansion of our country's infrastructure, the provision of adequate social services in these new areas, and the preparation of land use plans and programs with specific objectives of diversifying the agricultural base and increasing production. Mr. Speaker, given the current state of sugar in Guyana, it would be remiss of me not to reflect on the efforts of the PPPC government prior to 2015 to maintain the sector before the previous administration closed 4 estates. Mr. Speaker, the now opposition promised to keep the sugar estates open. However, they lied and lied and lied and deceived the people.
Honorable Member of Parliamentary Language, I'll have to strike the lie and lie and lied.
Untruths, misleading information. By 2010, Mr. Speaker, sugar would have become more competitive because of one, higher field productivity based on improved farm practices and improved genetic varieties, the utilization of additional areas of land mainly in the Skeldon and Albion, Rose Hall areas, enhance sugar recovery through the replacement of existing obsolete mills by larger state-of-the-art factories, which in addition to giving higher yields, exhibit significant scale economies. Special benefits would have been obtained through the construction of a 350 tech factory at Skeldon, the rationalization of the industry through the merging of some of the estates and some operations, the utilization of diffusion technology at 2 sites, and the co-generation of power from both the Guyana Power and Light Company and Gaisuku's own Bagas. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that the industry has been facing financial challenges as the demand for sugar globally has shifted. Persons have become more health conscious, the demand for table sugar has decreased, and this has ultimately influenced sugar's cost of production. Instead of exploring ways to diversify the industry, the previous administration chose to close estates, ultimately putting thousands of persons on the breadline. A government that promised all Guyanese, quote unquote, good life. Mr. Speaker, sugar must not be measured in financial terms only, but also in terms of economic and social implications. Sugar sustains drainage and irrigation systems in the various coastal areas. Sugar was the integrating force within the sugar estates and adjacent communities. If you destroy sugar, you will destroy perhaps those communities in itself. Mr. Speaker, strategic industries like sugar and bauxite cannot be measured in terms of cost-benefit analysis alone, but on other factors like social are equally important. Just think for a moment the loss of contributions to the National Insurance Scheme. Under the watch of the People's Progressive Party Civic, the rice industry too flourished. There were clear indications of increased productivity through better farming practices and the use of improved varieties, increased mill recovery, and through the modernization and rationalization of most of the mills, and by achieving greater efficiency in the use of water. In addition, because of the assistance which would have been provided by government in obtaining of market intelligence, there would have been more diversified international market for Guyana's rice, although the major importers would remain the European. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Member, your maiden speech. Honorable Member, your maiden speech could be longer if someone would move an extension for you to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given another 5 minutes to conclude his maiden presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member, you may continue.
Mr. Speaker, for agriculture in Guyana to reach its full potential, it must be strategically repositioned and must rest on the twin pillars of global competitiveness of agricultural products and balanced development of rural areas and communities. This budget acts as a stepping stone for those aspirations. Mr. Speaker, we have to work to correct the outdated and inefficient agriculture, health, and food safety systems. Extensive work to correct the inefficient land and water distribution and management systems and the weak and non-integrated information and intelligence system. Mr. Speaker, please allow me to zoom into Region 3. One of our farmers' main concerns is the access dams. Over the past 5 years, these dams were basically ignored, and it cost farmers additional monies to have their produce being transported to the markets. Added to this, there were no machines allocated to areas such as Philadelphia, Vorgenugen, Barnwell, Codrine, Nimes, and so on. This was due to the neglect by the former administration. Result, our farmers suffered. Mr. Speaker, also in region number 3, we found out that 4 bulldozers is down and only 1 operating at this moment. We will now have to work to expend monies to bring these machineries up to scratch. Mr. Speaker, some of the major farm to market access roads, such as Bridden Hoop, the La Jalousie, roads in Legwan, Wakanam, and Clay Brick, all weather road, were poorly maintained, and farmers were left to do self-help to fix these. Mr. Speaker, if I'm permitted to turn to canal number 1 and 2, those canals are in a very poor state. They cannot provide the necessary drainage services to the farmers. We visited these areas recently and found that they were poorly maintained, even though millions of dollars were awarded to a contractor for cleaning them. The contract was taken away from the residents and direct beneficiaries and awarded to one no knowledge of those canals. We will fix this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work to maintain all the drainage and irrigation canals in Region 3 and other regions across Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa, will surely provide details of this in his deliberation to this Honorable House. We will ensure all drainage cocers are fixed so that farmers can feel safe and their hard work and crops will not go down the drain when it rains. This is our commitment to our people, and we will stand by it. Mr. Speaker, in closing, please allow me a moment to touch on COVID-19. This pandemic has a negative impact on agriculture around the world, and it's no different here in Guyana. We already have programs in place through the Ministry of Health to ensure that our nation is kept safe during this time. However, at the level of the Ministry of Agriculture, we will pay special focus to our farmers to ensure that they follow all guidelines as they produce to feed our nation. Our teams from agencies such as NAREI, GLDA, GRDB, NDIA are geared to ensure that whenever they are in the fields, they also provide guidance and awareness to farmers to ensure they are safe. Mr. Speaker, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we are doing and will be doing. We wish to assure this nation that at no point we will ignore our farmers. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and all the honorable members of this House for listening. Thank you very much.